Raxan stood on the bridge, his gaze fixed on the tactical display. It revealed the shattered remnants of the Confederate fleet, scattered and disorganized after yet another devastating battle. Another dozen capital ships had been lost, their wrecked hulls floating lifelessly in space. How many more could they afford to lose before the rogue fleet completely overwhelmed their defenses? Not many, Raxan thought grimly. The economy was on the verge of collapse, strained by the constant need for new ships and crews. Shipyards operated non-stop, but for every new vessel deployed, 2 were destroyed. It was simple math, and the odds were not in their favor. Unless something changed dramatically, Confederacy space would soon fall. Their allies were few, and those still standing offered little hope of meaningful assistance. If they were to win this war, they needed help from an unknown, powerful source help Raxan hesitated to even consider. He entered the comm suite, activating a secure channel to the Confederate capital. Holographic images of the ruling consuls flickered to life. The situation is dire, Raxan began without preamble. Our forces are stretched thin, and the rogue fleets continue to advance. We must consider drastic measures, or defeat is inevitable. The consuls murmured in agreement. Speak, Admiral. What course of action do you recommend? Raxan drew a breath. I propose we make direct contact with humanity and request their military aid. Silence followed his statement. The consuls exchanged uneasy glances. Humanity was an unpredictable, primitive species, still in the early stages of faster-than-light travel. Despite this, they possessed fearsome war machines. How would humanity respond to open contact with an interstellar community? More importantly, could they be trusted in such a war? Are you certain this is wise? Consul Parnas asked cautiously. I do not make this suggestion lightly, Raxan replied. But our current strategies are failing, and unless we act, our people will be conquered or exterminated. What little intelligence we have suggests that humanity's warships and weapons surpass even our most advanced designs. With their help, we could turn the tide of this conflict. And if they refuse, or worse, exploit our weakness, another consul inquired. If that happens, then our fate is already sealed, Raxan answered firmly. But we must take the risk. Doing nothing will ensure our destruction just as surely as an unfavorable first contact. I believe the risk is worth it, for even the slightest chance of salvation. The consuls deliberated silently for several minutes. Finally, Consul Parnas spoke. By majority decree, we authorize first contact with Earth's military. Do you believe humanity's war power could truly turn the tide? Yes, Consul Raxan said. All indications suggest humanity's combat capabilities could surpass even those of the rogues. With their involvement, we may not only halt the rogue advance, but also reclaim lost worlds. Very well, Parnas said solemnly. You have our permission to present your proposal directly. We can only hope humanity is receptive. The fate of our people is now in their hands. As the channel closed, leaving Raxan alone on the darkened bridge, he studied the tactical display once more. If his gamble with humanity failed, everything would be lost. He had played his last card and could now only wait for fate to take its course. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Harris frowned as he reviewed the alien message. 3 days ago, an unidentified craft had entered orbit around the planet, maintaining a peaceful observation while broadcasting on all standard communication frequencies. After careful analysis, the message had been partially decoded. The aliens requested a direct meeting to discuss matters of strategic importance. This could mean anything from an alliance to a demand for surrender, but they came in peace and clearly wanted to talk. Ignoring such an event seemed too risky. Prepare my shuttle, Harris ordered. Destination: the visitor's mothership. An hour later, the shuttle breached Earth's orbit, accelerating towards the alien vessel. As Harris studied it through the viewport, he noted its immense size, nearly a kilometer long, with a teardrop shape and an intricate lattice of unknown alloys. This was clearly the work of an advanced civilization. As they approached, the vessel expertly matched their course, allowing for docking. Once inside, Harris and his Marine detachment prepared for the encounter. The airlock opened, and on the other side stood Admiral Raxan, unarmed and in a peaceful stance. "Welcome, Admiral Harris of Earth," he said. "I am Admiral Raxon of the Galactic Confederacy. Thank you for meeting on such short notice." Harris nodded. "Let's get to business. You mentioned a matter of strategic interest. I'm listening." Raxon wasted no time. The Confederacy is at war with a powerful enemy known as the Rogue Fleets. We've lost half of our worlds, and our fleets are on the brink of collapse. We seek your assistance in exchange for sharing our advanced technologies. Harris remained skeptical. "I don't see how this war concerns humanity. Your species has developed weapons and technologies far beyond our own. With your help, we could stop the rogue advance and begin a new era of cooperation." Harris considered the proposal. While wary, the opportunity was too significant to ignore. "You propose a historic alliance. But before we commit, I need more information. Show me your war room and tell me everything." The debriefing lasted for hours as Raxon laid out the dire situation. Rogue forces were relentless, pushing deeper into Confederacy space. Harris asked probing questions, digesting the information carefully. When the meeting concluded, he made his decision. "I'll deploy Task Force Aurora 3 battle cruisers and support ships. Their mission is to observe and assess the situation. They are not to engage in combat unless I give the order." Raxon nodded. "Thank you, Admiral. Your help could change the course of this war." A week later, Aurora arrived at Raxon's forward base. Rear Admiral Tolan took charge, meeting with Raxon to discuss strategy. As the rogue fleet gathered for an assault, the human ships remained in a support role, observing the battle. But when the Confederacy's forces were ambushed, Tolan made the call to intervene. "All units, engage the enemy," he ordered. The human fleet unleashed a devastating assault, catching the rogue forces off guard. Within moments, several rogue ships were destroyed, and the tide of the battle shifted. Tolan's forces fought with ruthless efficiency, overwhelming the rogues. After the battle, Raxon was stunned by humanity's military prowess. Despite being heavily outnumbered, the human battle group had decimated the enemy fleet. Raxon hailed Toland, expressing his gratitude and respect. "We must discuss future operations," Toland said, his tone serious. "The rogues are a threat not only to your people but to humanity as well. I propose a formal military alliance." Raxon agreed, though he voiced concerns about humanity's aggressive tactics. "While your strength is impressive, such unchecked violence could destabilize the galaxy if ever turned on allies." Toland's expression hardened. "We fight without mercy against those who show none. But I assure you, Admiral, Earth seeks only cooperative relations." With that, Raxon departed to inform the Confederacy's leaders of the new alliance. As his shuttle left, Toland gave the order to return to Earth. "Our fates are now intertwined," he said quietly, "for better or worse." As Admiral Raxon's shuttle departed, the weight of the situation lingered on Toland's mind. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. Humanity had taken its first major step into the interstellar arena, and the consequences of this alliance with the Confederacy could ripple far beyond the conflict with the rogue fleets. The decision to engage hadn't been made lightly, but now that humanity had intervened, there was no turning back. On the journey back to Earth, Toland reviewed the battle reports. The human ships had performed beyond expectations, their advanced weaponry and tactics catching the rogues off guard. Despite the victory, Toland knew that this was only a glimpse of the larger war. The rogue fleet's true strength had yet to be fully revealed, and the Confederacy would need much more than a single battle group to secure its future. Upon arrival at Earth, Toland wasted no time in briefing the Earth's military and political leadership. The alliance with the Confederacy was now formalized, and Earth was committed to the fight. The war room discussions were intense, with strategic planning sessions that stretched into the night. Scientists and engineers were already examining the technological data shared by the Confederacy, and there were hopes that integrating alien advancements could further strengthen humanity's fleets. Meanwhile, Raxon returned to the Confederate capital with news of the alliance. The consuls were cautious but ultimately relieved. They had gambled on reaching out to humanity, and it had paid off for now. But the rogue threat was still looming, and many within the Confederacy were uneasy about relying on an unpredictable new ally. The human fleet's brutal efficiency in battle had raised questions about their long-term intentions. Could they be trusted? Would humanity's growing power become a problem in the future? For Raxon, these concerns were valid, but there was no choice left. The Confederacy was on the brink of collapse, and they needed every advantage they could get. As the war continued to rage across the stars, he knew that more difficult decisions lay ahead. He had seen firsthand humanity's capabilities, and while they offered hope, they also brought an element of danger. Back on Earth, preparations were being made to send additional forces to support the Confederacy. Fleet commanders studied the rogues' tactics, strategizing on how to better counter their next moves. Intelligence reports hinted that the rogues were gathering reinforcements for a massive counter-offensive. The next engagement could very well decide the fate of entire sectors of space. Admiral Harris, now deeply involved in coordinating the war effort, reflected on the gravity of Earth's involvement. Humanity had always known that venturing into space would come with risks, but the scale of this galactic war was beyond what anyone had anticipated. The future of humanity was no longer confined to Earth's borders. It was now tied to the survival of distant worlds and alien civilizations. As fleets prepared to depart for the next engagement, Harris and Tolan met to discuss the broader implications of their alliance. They both understood that this war with the rogues was just the beginning. The political landscape of the galaxy would shift dramatically, and Earth's role as a rising power was already causing ripples. Raxon was right, Tolan said, his voice measured. The rogues are an existential threat, but this alliance, it could change everything. Harris nodded. We need to be careful. Winning this war is only the first step. What comes after may be even more complicated. The two admirals exchanged a glance, both knowing that the decisions they made in the coming months could determine the course of humanity's future in the galaxy. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but the alliance with the Confederacy had given them a chance to prove that humanity could not only survive but thrive among the stars. As the battle lines were drawn for the next phase of the war, the question lingered: could this fragile alliance withstand the pressures of galactic warfare? Only time would tell. The war with the rogues had begun in earnest, and humanity's place in the universe was about to be tested like never before. The next few weeks saw an unprecedented mobilization of human and Confederate forces. Earth's shipyards were operating at maximum capacity, producing new warships equipped with hybrid technology derived from Confederate knowledge. The Confederacy, while still battered, was showing signs of recovery, buoyed by the promise of reinforcements and the expertise of their new allies. The stakes were high, and the coming battles would decide the future of both civilizations. Admiral Harris stood on the bridge of the newly constructed flagship Valiant, watching the stars blur as the fleet engaged its faster-than-light engines. This time, they weren't just sending a battle group, they were sending an armada. Alongside him were Confederate warships, newly outfitted with human technology, forming a unified fleet for the first time. The joint operation had one goal: to strike deep into rogue territory and cripple their ability to wage war. On the Confederate side, Raxon led his people with renewed determination. The alliance with humanity had brought more than just military aid, it had brought hope. He knew the Confederacy's survival depended on the success of this operation, and he had faith in their human allies. But he also understood that failure would mean the end of both civilizations, for the rogues would not stop until every world, every colony, was reduced to ashes. As the joint fleet arrived at the outskirts of the rogue home sector, they were greeted by an ominous silence. The rogue armada had withdrawn from the front lines, concentrating its forces for one final stand. Every ship, every weapon was arrayed before them. Intelligence reports indicated the rogues had called upon their entire military might for this confrontation. Harris and Raxon conferred over secure channels, reviewing the final tactical plans. The combined fleet was outnumbered, but the element of surprise and the superior coordination between human and Confederate forces gave them a fighting chance. Raxen had laid out the rogue battle patterns while Toland's analysts had pinpointed weaknesses in their formations. The plan was bold, but it was their only hope. As the fleet moved into position, Harris gave the final order. All units commence the attack. The opening volley was devastating. Human ships, armed with advanced plasma torpedoes and energy lances, tore through the rogue front lines, while Confederate bombers swarmed the enemy capital ships. Rogue defenses crumbled under the coordinated assault, but their retaliation was swift. Massive energy blasts erupted from the core of their fleet, striking down several Confederate vessels in seconds. The battlefield quickly descended into chaos. For hours, the two sides clashed in a brutal exchange of fire. The rogue admiral, a cunning and ruthless tactician, continuously shifted tactics, attempting to isolate the weaker Confederate ships. But Toland, commanding from the Valiant, countered every move, deploying human ships to reinforce vulnerable positions and launch flanking attacks. On the Valiant's bridge, Harris received a grim report. Despite their initial success, the rogues were beginning to overwhelm certain sectors of the battlefield. Casualties were mounting. It became clear that victory would not come without a heavy price. Raxen, fighting on the front lines aboard his flagship, sent an urgent message. "Admiral Harris, we are nearing a critical point. Our forces are being pushed back. We need a decisive strike to turn the tide." Harris considered the situation. The rogue fleet was concentrated around their flagship, a massive dreadnought that coordinated their forces. Destroying it would throw the rogues into disarray, but it was heavily protected. It would require a suicide run to break through. "Prepare for a full assault on the enemy flagship," Harris ordered. "We're going to cut the head off the snake." The fleet's remaining strength surged toward the dreadnought, fighting through waves of rogue fighters and cruisers. Confederate and human ships were obliterated in the process, but they pushed forward relentlessly. As the Valiant closed in, Toland activated the ship's gravitic lance, a powerful weapon designed to tear apart the fabric of spacetime. It was their last, best hope. The Valiant's weapon fired, unleashing a torrent of energy that struck the rogue flagship directly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the dreadnought's shields buckled and the ship's core exploded in a blinding flash of light. The shock wave rippled through the rogue fleet, and with their command structure shattered, chaos erupted among their forces. Rogue ships began retreating, disengaging from the battle in disarray. The combined Confederate human fleet pressed the advantage, pursuing the retreating rogues, ensuring that none could regroup. The battle was won, but the cost was staggering. Hundreds of ships lay in ruins, and both sides had suffered tremendous losses. Yet, despite the devastation, the rogue threat had been neutralized. Their empire was broken, and the Confederacy had survived. In the aftermath, Admiral Harris and Admiral Raxen met aboard the Valiant to discuss the future. The war had been long and brutal, but it was finally over. The rogues were defeated, and the Confederacy, with the help of humanity, had reclaimed its lost worlds. "You have my deepest thanks," Admiral Raxen said solemnly. "Without your people, we would have perished. This alliance has saved us both." Harris nodded. "The victory belongs to both of our peoples. But now we must think about what comes next." The conversation turned to the future. With the rogues defeated, a new era was dawning for the galaxy. The Confederacy, rebuilt and strengthened by its alliance with Earth, would play a leading role in shaping interstellar relations. Humanity, once a solitary world on the fringes of space, had now earned its place among the stars. But Harris knew that the peace would be fragile. The galaxy had seen the power of humanity's war machine, and not all would welcome their rise. Tensions would grow as other species questioned Earth's intentions. Even within the Confederacy, some feared the power humanity now wielded. As the two admirals parted, Raxen offered a final word of caution. "Your people have proven themselves formidable allies, but beware. Power such as yours can be both a blessing and a curse. The galaxy watches, and it will remember." Harris acknowledged the warning. "We will tread carefully, Admiral." But know this Earth stands ready to defend its allies, and we are committed to a future of cooperation." With that, the meeting ended, and the fate of the galaxy was set on a new course. The war against the rogues had been won, but a new chapter was just beginning. Humanity and the Confederacy, bound together by war, would now face the challenges of peace. Whether their alliance would lead to prosperity or conflict, only time would tell. As the stars stretched out before them, Admiral Harris looked out from the bridge of the Valiant, knowing that the journey was far from over.